Welcome back to Haunted World, where we delve into the chilling and mysterious realms of true crime. Today, we're embarking on a journey through a case that is not only filled with unexpected twists, but also reveals the darker sides of human nature. This is the story of Sharon Marshall, a tale woven with secrets, betrayal, and tragedy that feels as if it were ripped straight from the pages of a suspenseful thriller. But rest assured, every detail is rooted in reality. Our story begins in 1975, when a young girl named Suzanne Marie Savakis was just around 5 or 6 years old. She had a mother, Sandra Sandy Chipman, and 3 siblings. At the time, her mother was struggling financially and made a decision that would ultimately change all of their lives forever. She married a man named Franklin Delano Floyd. Floyd presented himself as a caring stepfather, but in reality, he was a convicted criminal with a dark and violent past. He had already spent time in prison for a string of offenses, including sexual assault, attempted kidnapping, and bank robbery. But Sandra had no idea about the true nature of the man she had just married. Shortly after their marriage, Sandra was sentenced to 30 days in jail for writing bad checks. When she was released, she returned home, only to find that her children were gone. Franklin Delano Floyd had disappeared with all of them. Sandra was later able to recover 2 of her children, who had been left in foster care. But her eldest daughter, Suzanne, was never seen by her family again. Franklin had taken her, and from that moment on, he controlled every aspect of her life. For years, Suzanne lived under different names. The most well-known alias she was forced to use was Sharon Marshall. Floyd raised her as his own daughter, moving frequently to avoid suspicion. Despite the horror she was living in, Suzanne, or Sharon as she was known, was incredibly intelligent and ambitious. She excelled in school and even won a full scholarship to Georgia Tech to study aerospace engineering. But she never got to follow her dreams. The man who had stolen her life made sure she would never escape. Instead of letting her go to college, Floyd forced her into a life of crime and exploitation. By the late 1980s, he had relocated with her to various states, making her work as an exotic dancer. He controlled her completely, making sure she could never run away. During this time, Sharon became pregnant and gave birth to a son named Michael Hughes. The identity of Michael's biological father remains uncertain, but what is known is that Franklin Delano Floyd claimed the boy as his own. In 1990, Sharon Marshall was living under yet another identity. This time, she was known as Tanya Hughes. She was married to a man named Clarence Hughes, though it is believed this marriage was arranged by Floyd to further cover his tracks. On April 30th, 1990, Tanya was found gravely injured on the side of a highway in Oklahoma City. She had been hit by a car in what initially appeared to be a tragic accident. However, the circumstances surrounding her death raised many questions. Doctors quickly realized that she had suffered severe injuries before the accident, injuries that suggested she had been beaten. Witnesses also reported seeing Franklin Delano Floyd acting suspiciously near the scene. 2 days later, Tanya Hughes, who was actually Suzanne Marie Savakis, died in the hospital. She was only in her early 20s. At her funeral, Floyd showed up with their son, Michael, but something was off. He barely seemed upset about her death. Instead, he acted controlling and aggressive, trying to prevent anyone from asking too many questions. When people from the community began looking into her past, they made a chilling discovery. Tanya Hughes, the woman everyone thought they knew, did not exist. There were no official records of her before a few years prior. The real question was, who was she? Following Sharon's death, Floyd took Michael Hughes and went on the run. Eventually, the authorities caught up with him in 1994, and Michael was placed in foster care. By this time, investigators had begun piecing together the puzzle of Sharon's true identity. But before they could get answers, Floyd did something unimaginable. In September 1994, he walked into Michael's elementary school in Oklahoma with a gun. He forced the principal into a car at gunpoint, demanding that he drive him to where Michael was being kept. Once they arrived, he took Michael and vanished. The boy was never seen again. Years later, Floyd finally confessed to what happened. He admitted to murdering Michael shortly after the kidnapping, claiming that he wouldn't have been a normal child anyway due to his upbringing. It was a heartbreaking end for the little boy who had already lost so much. During their investigation, authorities discovered that Floyd was also connected to another murder. In 1989, a woman named Cheryl Nkomeso, a co-worker of Sharon's at a strip club, had gone missing. Her skeletal remains were later found near a highway in Florida. In 1995, a crucial piece of evidence linked Floyd to her death: an old briefcase containing photographs of Cheryl being brutally beaten. The evidence was undeniable. Floyd was charged with her murder and sentenced to death. It wasn't until years later that DNA testing officially confirmed that Sharon Marshall was actually Suzanne Marie Savakis, the little girl who had been stolen decades earlier. Franklin Delano Floyd remained on death row in Florida for years until he died of natural causes in January 2023. This case is one of the most disturbing and heartbreaking true crime stories of all time. A little girl was stolen from her family, forced to live under false identities, manipulated, and abused for her entire life. Even after her death, it took decades for the truth to come to light. And what makes it even more terrifying, cases like this still happen today. If you found this story disturbing, make sure to subscribe to Haunted World for more cases like this. And remember, sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones from horror movies. They're the ones that actually happened. She was young, full of dreams, and far from home, but someone was watching her every move, and one day, she disappeared. What happened next became one of the most disturbing stories the world has ever known. Lindsay Hawker was born on May 5, 1984, in the town of Ruislip in London, England. She was known for her vivacious and warm personality. In 2006, Lindsay decided to embark on a new adventure and moved to Japan to teach English. Inspired by her passion for teaching and love for travel in Japan, Lindsay quickly adapted to her new life, building friendships and enjoying the rich cultural experiences the country offered. She was noted for her dedication to her students and enthusiasm in the classroom. Her friends remembered her warmth and kindness, painting a picture of a vibrant and promising young woman with a bright future. On March 24, 2007, Lindsay met Tatsuya Ichihashi at a bar in Tokyo, where she was enjoying a night out with a few friends. Ichihashi was charming, appearing friendly and appealing. They engaged in conversation, and despite warning signs, Lindsay decided to go to his apartment after the decision would prove fateful. Reports later suggested that Ichihashi was lying about his age and even his background, further demonstrating how easily someone can be deceived. Masking true intentions behind a facade of charm, friends began to grow concerned when Lindsay did not return home the following day. She was expected to attend a gathering with friends but never showed up. Panic set in when her friends reported her disappearance to the police. The initial response included reviewing security footage from the area, which revealed Lindsay leaving the bar with Ichihashi days past. The local community, alongside the authorities, intensified their search efforts. Missing posters featuring Lindsay's face were plastered across Tokyo, drawing public attention, and the investigation quickly focused on Ichihashi as the prime suspect. Police discovered that he had gone into hiding after Lindsay's disappearance. His actions in the following days included suspicious behaviors, such as avoiding contact and attempting to dispose of evidence. Lindsay's friends, family, and the local community remained hopeful yet increasingly anxious. The media spotlight intensified as the search operations ramped up, showcasing the concern of a nation that prided itself on safety and security. On March 30, 2007, a breakthrough came when authorities discovered Lindsay's body buried in a bathtub filled with concrete on a property in Ichihashi's father's home, located in Chiba Prefecture. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, leading to widespread outrage, and Suro, the discovery was heartbreaking for Lindsay's loved ones, transforming public interest into a deep expression of grief. The tragedy of her violent death overshadowed the vibrancy she had brought to those around her, serving as a stark reminder of the potential shadows lurking even in safe places. With Ichihashi now officially a fugitive, an international manhunt was initiated. He made headlines as he evaded authorities for more than 2 years. His case became emblematic of the potential dangers facing women abroad and the importance of vigilance during this time. Ichihashi changed his appearance to evade capture, using various aliases and frequently moving between locations. This cat-and-mouse game captured media attention, peeling back layers from his persona and revealing a chilling reality underlining trust and deception. In 2009, Ichihashi was finally apprehended when he tried to seek medical assistance after an injury sustained during an attempted robbery. At this point, he was recognized because of the widespread media coverage and the details released about his appearance following his arrest. The trial began in 2011. It was marked by the emotional testimonies of Lindsay's friends and family, highlighting her kindness and potential future. Ichihashi's defense claimed the killing was an accident, a claim met with disdain by those who knew Lindsay. Ultimately, Ichihashi was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, bringing some closure to Lindsay's family and friends, though the heartbreak remained. Lindsay Hawker's tragic case had profound effects, raising awareness about safety and crime against women, especially expatriates living abroad. It inspired discussions about the importance of caution and personal safety, compounding broader dialogues around violence and victim. Her case is often cited in discussions about the risks faced by travelers and foreign workers worldwide, emphasizing that vigilance is a critical need, irrespective of perceived security in one's surroundings. The memory of Lindsay Hawker lives on, not just in her family and friends, but in the lessons gleaned from her tragic story. The life and untimely death of Lindsay Hawker remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. Lives of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and Mother Dee Dee Blanchard appeared completely defined. Gypsy Rose Blanchard was known publicly as a patient suffering from multiple severe disorders, including leukemia. Dee Dee was always present, managing daily care. Gypsy Rose's life carefully maintained. Gypsy Rose began communicating online. Someone knew Nicholas Go-John. Initial conversations seemed ordinary, but over time, they became more frequent and they became good friends. On June 14, 2015, Gypsy Rose moved through her routines like any other day. No one would have guessed that by the end of the night, everything would be destroyed. Dee Dee Blanchard's bedroom, a place that had always seemed ordinary. End of that night, Dee Dee Blanchard would be murdered. The scene left behind offered no easy explanations, no forced entry, no obvious struggle, no immediate motive that investigators could see. Community, friends, and neighbors were left shocked, struggling to reconcile the image of a devoted mother and her ill daughter. Everything suggested planning, yet no one outside could understand why or how it had happened. Police began piecing together evidence. Every lead raised more questions. Who could have committed such an act? Gypsy Rose Blanchard was taken into custody. During questioning, her words began to reveal a reality that no one outside the house had seen. Why June 14, 2015 had ended in tragedy. Gypsy Rose. At first, her answers were cautious, measured, almost rehearsed. But gradually a pattern emerged. She described the night of June 14, 2015 in her own words, details of preparation, timing. She described life inside the house not as illness and care, but as strict rules and constant monitoring. I wasn't allowed to make decisions about anything. Every meal, every doctor's visit, every conversation I had with anyone. Dee Dee decided it for me. If I questioned her, I was punished. She revealed that many of the illnesses attributed to her were exaggerated. She underwent were often unnecessary. People believed I was sick, she explained. Everyone thought she was helping me, but really, she was controlling me. Gypsy Rose described the isolation she endured, the constant surveillance, and the pressure to appear weak, dependent, and helpless. It was only in the final moments leading up to the murder that she found a way to break free, a plan that Nicholas Go-John became someone she trusted, someone outside the walls of the house. Her words revealed a slow, almost invisible influence. He didn't tell me what to do at first, she admitted. He just listened. When I told him things about how my life really was, he understood. According to the statements, Gypsy Rose Blanchard provided access to the house and ensured that nothing would interrupt what was about to happen. Dee Dee Blanchard was attacked while asleep. The weapon used was a knife taken from within the home, and the attack was deliberate and sustained, leaving no chance of survival. Gypsy Rose remained in another room during the act, aware of what was happening but not physically present in the moment itself. After the murder, both left the house together. There was no attempt to stage the scene as a robbery or accident. Instead, the focus shifted to leaving the area quickly. Both Gypsy Rose and Nicholas Goh-John were arrested. Nicholas Goh-John was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for his role in the murder, while Gypsy Rose Blanchard received a 10-year sentence. Judge acknowledged the years of manipulation, control, and confinement. Gypsy Rose was released on parole on December 28, 2023 after serving about 8 of her 10-year sentence. Since her release, she has lived outside prison and even welcomed her first child with her partner. Some say, hell is empty because all the devils are already here. What if Monster was cute little boy? Graham Frederick Young was born in 1947 in Neasden, London. To outsiders, he looked like any other boy, quiet, intelligent, introverted, but inside, something different. From a very young age, he developed a deep fascination with chemistry and with poison, their effects on the human body, how they worked, how they killed. While other children read storybooks, Graham Young read about arsenic, antimony, and thallium. He wasn't just learning, he was preparing. At just 14 years old, Graham Young began experimenting. Not in a lab, not on paper, but in real life. He started small, adding tiny amounts of poison into the food and drinks of people around him. His victims, the people closest to him, his family. Soon, strange things began happening in his home. His stepmother, Molly Young, began falling ill. Unexplained vomiting, severe weakness, constant pain. Doctors were confused. They treated symptoms, but never found the cause, because no one suspected that the danger was already inside the house. In 1962, the sickness reached its peak. Molly Young died. Her death was ruled as natural. No investigation, no suspicion, just a tragic loss. But inside the same house, a teenage boy watched and learned. Graham didn't stop. He became more confident, more experimental. He poisoned his father, Fred Young. He poisoned his sister, slowly, repeatedly, testing doses, observing effects. To him, this wasn't murder. It was research. Eventually, something didn't add up. Doctors began to suspect poisoning. Tests were conducted, and the results were shocking. The victims had high levels of antimony in their bodies, a rare and dangerous poison. And suddenly, suspicion turned toward one person, the boy who loved chemistry. In 1962, at just 14 years old, Graham Young was arrested. At his home, police found bottles of poison, detailed notes on toxic substances, a diary describing his experiments. There was no denial, no regret, only fascination. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility. Doctors studied him, tried to understand him. Years passed, and slowly, something unbelievable happened. They believed he had improved, that he was no longer a danger. And in 1971, they released him. Graham Young walked free. No one around him knew his past. No one knew what he had done. He got a job at a factory called John Hadland Laboratories in Bovingdon, Hertfordshire, a place where chemicals were handled daily, a place where access to poison was easy, too easy. Soon, workers at the factory began falling ill, just like before. Nausea, vomiting, weakness. Doctors were confused again, felt like history, repeating itself. One of his co-workers, Bob Eggle, became severely ill. Another, Fred Biggs, didn't survive. Fred Biggs died in 1971. At first, it seemed natural, but something felt wrong. Investigators tested the victims, and once again, the same poison appeared, antimony, the same poison Graham Young had used years ago. In 1972, he was arrested again. This time, there was no second chance. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and died in prison in 1990. November 1959, Holcombe. The Clutter family lived on a large farm. Herbert Clutter, successful farmer and owner of River Valley Farm. His wife, Bonnie Clutter, struggled with long-term mental health issues. Daughter, Nancy Clutter, known in school and community, and son, Kenyon Clutter. On November 15th, when Nancy did not appear for class, common friend went to her house to check why she was not there. Door was already open. As rooms were checked, the reality became clear. All 4 family members were found brutally murdered in separate areas of house. Crime scene did not show signs of panic. It did not look like something that happened suddenly. Police arrived and began documenting everything. No forced entry. That detail immediately changed the direction of the case, because it meant one thing: whoever entered that house was either trusted. The house itself did not show widespread struggle. No signs of a fight moving from room to room. No indication that the victims had a chance to escape. The first assumption was simple: someone close to the family, someone known. Names were examined: friends, workers, associates, anyone who had contact with the household. Nothing stood out. The next possibility was financial motive. Herbert Clutter had money, land, business stability. Records were checked, transactions reviewed, any sign of conflict investigated. There was nothing, no debts, no threats. Then came the idea of robbery, but the scene didn't match. There was no large amount of money missing, no clear sign that valuables had been taken. If this was robbery, it didn't follow the pattern. This case had no direction. Investigation remained open in every direction. No connection, no evidence. But from a prison, a man named Floyd Wells provided information that shifted everything. He stated that he had spoken about the Clutter family to another inmate. He described something that was not true: a large amount of cash inside the house, money that did not actually exist, but someone believed it. 2 individuals who had never met the Clutter family. 2 individuals who had no connection to that house: Richard Hickok and Perry Smith. Their names entered the investigation for the first time. The case had direction. The case began to move in a clear direction for the first time. Information gathered showed that Richard Hickok and Perry Smith had recently traveled across states. Movements were not random. The connection to the Clutter family did not come from personal history, but from a single piece of information shared earlier by Floyd Wells. The timeline began to take shape. Richard Hickok and Perry Smith prepared for the journey with a specific weapons. Richard Hickok and Perry Smith were taken into custody. During interrogation, Richard Hickok says that the plan was to get the money and leave. That was the whole idea. There wasn't supposed to be anything else. Perry Smith provided more detailed what happened inside the house. He says that there wasn't any safe. There was nothing there like that. Everything after that just happened. This confirmed that the original motive failed at the moment of entry. Richard Hickok and Perry Smith were sentenced to death and later executed. Carrie Farver, a 37-year-old computer programmer and devoted mother, went missing. November 2012, Carrie Farver, a 37-year-old single mother and computer programmer, someone known by family. Just days earlier, Carrie had been spending time with Dave Kropa. Their relationship had begun casually, only around 2 weeks. Then, everything changed. November 13th, a message arrives on Dave's phone. Carrie wants more, not casual anymore. She wants commitment. Feels sudden, out of place. Dave refuses. The next day, something impossible begins. After that day, she went missing. But her social messages don't stop. Telling people she left town. Telling family Carrie needed space. Dave later tells investigators, "It didn't sound like the person I met." Days turn into weeks. The messages don't stop. Now they are no longer just updates. Another name enters: Liz Gollier, friend of Dave. Liz also receives messages from Carrie. She tells authorities, "I don't know why this is happening. I'm scared she's gonna hurt me." 2 victims, 1 unseen aggressor. That's how it looks. Threats. Years pass. Carrie Farver, officially missing, yet constantly communicating. That contradiction becomes the center of everything. Investigators dig deeper. Digital forensics, Every message, no matter the account, no matter the platform. Years after Carrie Farver went missing from Omaha, the investigation shifts direction. Not because of a body, not because of a witness. More than 30,000 messages. What once looked like a missing woman communicating now looks like a controlled system. Digital forensics begins narrowing. That origin leads to one person, Liz Gollier. She insists, Carrie is still alive. She's been doing this to me too. The narrative remains unchanged, but investigators already have what they need. Search history reveals tracking behavior. Account activity shows continuous control. Data places every message from Carrie at locations connected to Liz. There is no gap. Then comes the physical evidence. Inside a property linked to Liz, investigators recover items connected to Carrie, personal belongings, and more critically, biological evidence. Forensic testing confirms it. Carrie Farver did not went missing. Carrie Farver murdered. On December 2016, Liz Gollier is arrested for murder of Carrie Farver. During interrogation, Liz does not break. She says, I didn't kill Carrie. She's alive. She's been doing this to all of us. Even when confronted with technical evidence, she redirects, claims hacking, claims manipulation, claims someone is framing her, but investigators present evidence of her being killer. Forensic testing reveals blood evidence belonging to Carrie inside a vehicle linked to Liz. This is no longer digital. This is physical confirmation. She's sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering of Carrie Farver. July 1979. Edward was last seen walking to a local store in Atlanta. He never returned home. Days later, his body was found, not far from where another child would soon be discovered. At the time, his case was treated separately. There was no confirmed connection. Shortly after Edward's disappearance, Alfred went missing. His body was found in a wooded area. The proximity of both discoveries raised the first serious concern. Two boys, similar age, same city, short time gap. October 1979. Youssef left home to run a small errand. He was expected to return quickly. He didn't. His body was later found strangled. This case marked a turning point. The age difference showed that the victims were not limited to teenagers. At this stage, authorities officially began linking cases. The term pattern was no longer avoided. There were clear similarities. Bodies were often found in wooded or remote areas. The number of cases increased. Public concern turned into fear. Families began restricting children from going outside alone. Police resources expanded. Despite the growing list of victims and similarities, there was no eyewitness placing a suspect at the scene. No direct forensic match to a specific individual. No confession. Only patterns. And increasing urgency. By early 1980, the number of victims had increased. The cases were no longer being handled as isolated incidents. A coordinated task force was formed. Initially, the focus was on children. But as more cases appeared, investigators noticed something else. Some victims were older, young adults. Initially, the focus was on children. But as more cases appeared, investigators noticed something else. Some victims were older. Investigators adjusted their approach. Instead of only searching neighborhoods, they began focusing on bridges and river crossings. The reasoning was direct. If bodies were being placed in water, there had to be a point of access. No suspect could be directly placed with multiple victims. No single piece of physical evidence connected all cases. No clear witness description existed. The case remained open, complex, and unresolved. On May 1981, officers were conducting surveillance near a bridge over the Chattahoochee River. During the night, they heard a sound, a splash, not loud, but distinct enough to raise attention. A vehicle was observed crossing the bridge around that time. Officers stopped the vehicle. The driver was identified as Wayne Williams. There was no immediate evidence of a crime. No body, no weapon, no visible sign of wrongdoing. Wayne Williams explained that he was out late for work-related reasons. At that moment, officers had no legal grounds to detain him further. He was released. 2 days later, a body was found downstream. It was identified as Nathaniel Cater. The timing raised serious concern. This sequence was no longer coincidence in the eyes of investigators. From that point forward, attention began to center on Wayne Williams. Experts concluded that certain fibers found on victims were consistent with those from Williams' residence. Dog hair found on some victims was similar to hair from his dog. In June 1981, Wayne Williams was arrested. He never confessed to the murders. Even after being caught and convicted, his position remained consistent. He denied killing anyone. He claimed he was innocent. He said he was being wrongly accused, but evidence say something else. He was sentenced to life imprisonment.